So, Jason, we saw a very interesting recent announcement about a vulnerability or a potential vulnerability with ADCS. That's Microsoft's Active Directory Certificate Services. What was that?
Tim, in this case, I I think that the hack. And by the way, this is Microsoft self-disclosing, so
Mm-hmm. Okay.
this is
Good job.
Microsoft doing the right thing. Good on them. But it's, as you're going to see, this is just another in a long line of problems. I want to, at the top of this podcast, Tim, to connect this to a bigger idea that you and I have been talking about recently, which is it's great to hand out a cert.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. But what happens if you're handing that cert to something that's not legitimate? And I think with AI agents, which is like non-human identities, as an example, okay?
Sure.
I think that this problem is going to... You and I have just published a number of podcasts of how to deal with that. Spiffy Spire, right? As protocols, we're based off of identifying the thing that's going to be in possession of the cert, and not just having authentication, but authorization and making sure you're handing the cert to a legitimate thing.
Right.
This whole hack that we're going to talk about in this podcast is the witness object. In other words, the thing that's doing the enrolling, if you will, for ADCS. Anybody, I'm not going to say anybody. A lot of entities who had low-level rights as a domain-connected user in Active Directory with certificate services could actually spit out certs, to where they wanted, because they were able to create fake domain controllers,
Right.
and the domain controller acting as the witness.
At which point the whole thing is useless, right? Like I can have the strongest key in the world, but if you can come and get the key inappropriately, who cares?
And this is what happened, Tim.
Yeah.
This is what happened. But guys, I got a little bit of visual material here for those of you who are listening to us from audio, we will try our very best to verbalize what's going on the screen here.
And maybe if you are listening to us on audio, that's great. Maybe if you really want to see this, come back. And we do have a YouTube channel, and you can see this for yourself on the YouTube channel.
So, Tim,
Go
this
on.
hack has a name. It's called Certighost.
Okay.
And so basically this is has a CVE. It's CVE 2026-54121. And it is essentially a domain control impersonation attack against Active Directory certificate services.
Gotcha. Yeah, Certighost.
Certighost. Yes, Tim, this is how many times we've mentioned ADCS on our podcast.
All right.
Please describe what you're seeing here.
Okay, so ADCS has been a recurring root causes theme. You have different columns. You have 33 episodes with a 1+ exact match.
Yes, places where we have mentioned ADCS just once are in, just the regular unbolded lettering.
Yeah, and some of these that you've include things like 21 PKI pitfalls, future of choosing PKI, duo MFA flaw, internal discussory, inventory manifesto. So a bunch of those. You have 7 where we have mentioned ADCS 5 or more times. This includes free PKI is not free, the Petit Patam MSCA attack, new MSCA attack toolkits, 80 patch knocks out non-MS identity consumers. Episode 443 is MSCA going away. 482 Microsoft and PQC. 516 PQC for ADCS. And the coverage span is from 2019 to 2026, which is the full term of this podcast.
Yeah, the reason I threw this slide into, as a visual material for us is to actually say that, this is now going to be our 34th episode where we talk about ADCS.
Right. Yes.
And
definitely one of the 7 where we have 5 or more. Yes. correct.
Exactly. And so, Tim, I've actually got another slide for you here, which is, tell me what you're seeing here.
Okay. ADCS has a long layered security history. It says that's the headline, and then you've got a grid where on the vertical level we have different kinds of evidence. So we have product CVE is one row, research, white hat research is a second one, mapping relay is a third, and defense is a fourth. And then at the top, you have it broken into eras, 2000 to 2020, and you have 2021, 2022, 23 to 24, and 25 to 26. And we have a color-coded within the grid pointing out exactly what happened in every one of these squares through that time period, and they all are populated.
Tim, there's never been a period where ADCS hasn't had issues. And the evidence for what those security issues were are varied. And some of these, Tim, are like epically serious, and some of these have never even really gone away. This is my point, is that 34 episodes about ADCS, and here is really the reason why. We don't talk about ADCS when it's humming along. We talk about ADCS when it has its issues, right?
Yeah.
And
of course,
how many issues
ADCS is high stakes because it's used very broadly.
Exactly.
Right.
And so let's just get into what the issue was here. Tim, there is a big difference between handing out a valid cert and having the cert handed to a requester that was actually entitled.
Right.
So there is a trust gap. So Certighost attacks is really a demonstrated attack, self-reported by self-reported by Microsoft, my apologies, about how to attack not the cryptography, but how to actually create a spoofed domain controller, which is an issue.
Right.
And so therefore, really what's going on here is that what we're seeing on the screen is another slide showing that, the claim can be true. The signature, in other words, you can have invalid signatures on a cert, self-signed certs. We've seen those kinds of attacks before. But what happens when it's an actually valid cert from a valid private CA with valid cryptography handed to an entity that has a false claim of being able to possess that cert?
So
that is the problem we're seeing.
That is a signed lie. It is signed.
Correct.
But it is still a lie.
That is 100% correct, Tim.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing is, the issuance itself, right, there's a decision to be made by the CA. There's a requester asking for an identity. And I have to repeat this over and over, Tim. We're going to see this problem with agentic AI. We're going to see this in the future with non-human identities, because you're going to have non-human requesters.
Yes. Yes.
And that's going to lead an enterprise CA to have to make a really hard decision. Is the requester legitimate? And this is the whole point. Decision number one is, should I issue? And then now that the thing has a cert, there has to be a whole other layer of, authentication. Your second major decision. Which Active Directory account, in the case of ADCS, because of course it uses Active Directory and domain controllers, which Active Directory account does this certificate represent? And as you can see from the previous slides you saw of all the problems around Active Directory and Active Directory certificate services, because you cannot really separate the two. Is the cert legit? Well, probably, maybe. Is this Certighost ticket underneath it legit? Well, we've seen over the years that there's a ton of shenanigans there, and et cetera, et cetera. In other words, there's other decisions that can lead to a poisoned certificate. So in this case, this is getting a little bit complicated here on what I've got on the screen, but really these two requests steer the entire fallback lookup in terms of trying to figure out what is legitimate, and is not just the requester legit, but is the certificate legitimate. And in this case, this is the heart, what I'm showing on the screen here, which is the requester.
Yeah.
The requester was not legitimate. The enterprise CA was completely legitimate. What the attacker was able to do in this case was stand up a spoofed domain controller and have it act as a rogue witness to ADCS, because ADCS says, I don't know who this requester is, right? That's, as you see, number one, number two, number three.
Source of truth, right?
The source of truth has to come from the GPOs of Active Directory, which is the domain controller. Mm-hmm. So this domain controller here is an attacker-controlled endpoint in this case. So the enterprise CA, all it's doing is saying, hey, I take requests and hand out certs, but I am utterly dependent on the witness, meaning the domain controller, to be legitimate. And in this case, this is the heart and the fundamental problem that we're seeing with Certighost as an attack.
Yeah.
So Tim, there's a few different ways that we can see, that we can really look at this, but I would have to say that there's probably a number of issues that could be going on underneath the scenes here. Look, and that's the reason I tried to show. This is our 34th episode about ADCS. Just an entire grid of problems over over a decade. And what we're dealing with here is that in this case, there was no proof that the domain controller was the real domain controller.
Yes. So let me ask, sorry if I'm going to jump ahead on this question, but I'm going to ask it. Is this an attack that could have been done at any time? Is this an attack we could have found 10 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So go on.
There's your short answer, Tim. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. It's now just you and I on the screen here. Yeah.
Right. So,
and this is
but
my
of
point.
course,
That's
there's more attention to this now, right? Because so sometimes we see this. You go, wow, gee, you know what? I guess this flaw was always there, but the rest of the world has gone through some kind of shift or evolution where suddenly the stakes are much higher, right? And this is what we're going to see now, that we're all going to have agents everywhere. And if this kind of attack is regularly repeatable, then, we're all horribly vulnerable.
Here's what happened at Microsoft in my own dramatic fictionalization that's in my head.
Okay. Got it.
Somebody at Microsoft obviously watched the Root Causes podcast. Obviously.
Of course, that goes without saying.
There's no other explanation.
Yeah, no other conceivable explanation, yes.
And they heard us say, you should never allow an agent to attest to itself. Mm-hmm. And when they heard that, they said, we should actually go back.
Let's have a look. Let's crack our knuckles and see if this is happening. Yes.
And somebody figured out, wow, somebody with a fake domain controller, ADCS is just, it's just taking requests and handing out certs. It is utterly dependent on the domain controller for the source of truth.
Right.
Well, what happens if you can fake the domain controller?
Yeah.
And even with fairly low-level privileges? Well, turns out Certighost. You'd think that this was thought out, Tim.
Yeah.
But it was just discovered.
So I'm an enterprise. What's my response to this? I mean, I guess you could say don't let me fake domain controllers, but I'm not doing that on purpose, right? I'm doing that because somebody's exploiting a flaw.
Like any good, CVE response, this was hidden until the patch was available. Microsoft has the patch. Patch.
Okay, and at that point, I can patch for this and rely on the fact that this attack will not occur.
Yes. Look, I'm going to depend on Microsoft to have created the proper patch.
Sure.
I'm going to believe them.
Sure.
I'm totally going to believe them.
Yep, totally.
Except here's the problem, Tim. How many people can actively just go off and, patch a fundamental system like ADCS?
Yeah.
That's not always easy.
Yep, absolutely. But it sounds like you've got it. Because again, if our entire identity system can just be compromised by somebody just making a false claim and getting an identity, then might as well not have an identity system. I mean, at that point, everything's open, right? Zero trust is turned into complete and utter trust. And that's, we could easily spend the next 5 hours explaining all the ways that can hurt you.
Tim, one of the things I wanted to mention in this podcast, I think I mentioned it at the top, but I'm going to say it again, which is this is not an attack against the cryptography at all.
Yes.
And when you hear like Certighost, and the term cert is in the name of the hack, and it kind of, from a very psychological level, I can see people saying, "Oh, there it is. There's a hack of the cert or a hack of cryptography. Somebody stole a cert." And it's like, nope. This is the bad guy. Thankfully, a white hat somewhere within Microsoft thinking about this holistically, and realizing that no. This is a problem that's going to be with us in all future systems if we don't think correctly. You and I spend how many words on this podcast talking about hacks against cryptography and potential hacks and how strong is MLDSA and the strength of RSA, the strength of EC. That's all we talk about that constantly. Folks, really, maybe the most important thing is nailing down how you issue and how you enroll.
If I can trick the system into giving me a valid ID, then who cares? Absolutely, right?
So therefore, I wanted to tie it into that bigger theme, Tim.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right, Jay. And we do place a lot of emphasis, and the whole move toward PQC has shown a bright spotlight on the idea of, is our cryptography secure? But one of the things that we've said a lot of times on this episode, and we'll say again, is, it doesn't matter where the flaw in the armor is. If there's a flaw in the armor, then the bad guy can go through. And if the flaw's somewhere else, right? Oh, I can't beat your cryptography. Fine. Let me see if I can beat your identity system. Oh, okay, fine. Problem solved. Let me go do bad things, right?
One of our oldest.
This is what we're seeing.
100, Tim. One of our oldest adages on this podcast is computers are hard.
Computers are hard. They are hard. I agree. They're hard.
The only thing harder than computers is being a blue team on computers.
Yes. True. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So there it is, Certighost. We just wanted to describe it. There are resources on the internet. I would say don't read anything other than how to patch. Just if you're running ADCS, which is a lot of people who listen to this podcast, get out there and patch right now.
All right.
Read about that CVE, and let's think about how to not have this as a major problem going forward with all other private CA systems that are going to be handing out certs to non-human identities at massive scale.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. And that was going to be the last point I tried to make with this. Let's imagine where else this might happen. That isn't ADCS. Like, let's say ADCS is solved, right? That's not the only identity system by any stretch of the imagination, right? And we need to learn the lesson from this and apply this everywhere.
Good on Microsoft. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.